Welcome to the Homesteading School, where every house is a homestead. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Homesteading School podcast for this month in April. We have some awesome guests today. I want to introduce you guys. We've got Harmony and Luke. They've come down today to have a chat with us about time capital and all the details about that, more specifically in regards to permaculture and how permaculture approaches this topic. So thank you guys for coming down today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
It's so good. We actually have, I know these guys from a while ago. We met, what were we saying before? About 8 years ago?
8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
About 8 years ago. And I mentioned Luke earlier in the conversation, or in one of my first podcasts, because Luke was the guy who told me basically that it wasn't just about me on my own farm, but it was about the rest of the community. And in order to learn how to do permaculture better, you've got to be connected with other people. So that actually started my journey. So if you get a chance to watch that video, you star in that as well. So yes. So today we want to talk about time capital and how it connects with permaculture, right? So the first question, first before we start, Luke and Harmony, can you tell us a little bit about your journey in permaculture and how you came into it yourself?
Oh, okay. I actually came into permaculture quite a long time ago, when I lived up in North Queensland, up around the Daintree up there. I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago when it was just starting up. And I thought, that was very interesting, a lot of the concepts. And then in Mackay here, we were working at the community gardens, doing voluntary work at community gardens, and that's where I met Luke, who had come up from New South Wales as a permaculturist. So I just click, oh yes, I know about this permaculture stuff. Yeah. I want more.
Yeah. So when, so it was sort of a journey you had been on, and it all just sort of unfolded and got more and more clear.
Yeah, at the right time in the right place. Like, I implemented bits of permaculture that I'd learned a long time ago, not really understanding why I was planting this or why that was important. So when the opportunity came along to learn more, it was just, oh yes, I'm ready.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So Luke, did you want to tell us a little bit about your story getting into permaculture?
Yeah, I think very similar to Harmony in that sense. I suppose in a way there's an unofficial and an official click over having practical skills as a lad, I suppose. I always enjoyed building out of recycled materials and grew up in a family home with a veggie garden and a lemon tree and chooks and things like that. And so had always been, I suppose, mindful of footprints on the planet and things like that. And it wasn't until I can pretty well say 22, 23 years ago, somebody suggested to me, it's kind of like, Luke, I reckon you would benefit from a permaculture course.
Yeah.
And so in 1998, I ventured off down to, I was living in Queensland at the time, ventured off down to northern New South Wales and did what's referred to as a permaculture design certificate course, which is a 2-week live-in intensive course. With a gentleman by the name of Bill Mollison, who's an author and I suppose co-founder, coined the word permaculture. And it was really interesting because it was during that 2-week live-in permaculture experience, it was kind of like my life just sort of went clunk, 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 clunk.
Yeah.
And every day it was like, something clunking into position again. And at the end of it, I sort of walked out of there and went, I'm a permaculturalist, and sort of have been, I suppose, doing my best to wear that coat, wear that hat, and be that. It sort of it helped it because it gave me structure and goal.
Yeah.
Goal oriented.
It's funny because I remember having exactly the same experience when I first came across permaculture. It was like, it just, exactly that same feeling, it just clunked all into place. I'm like, this makes complete sense to me. It's like it's like we already know part of us inside of us recognises it, and it just fits in our whole, the design of how we're made. Yes,
and
absolutely.
It's not hard.
It's not hard to understand the concept.
Get your head around it, yes.
But it takes time to actually learn to implement, and that's
correct.
One of the biggest lessons I learned about permaculture is to give myself plenty of time to learn how to do it in my real life. So just quickly, for those of us who don't know what permaculture is, can you please give us a brief definition of permaculture?
Okay.
Give it a crack. You can both have a go if you like.
We do a 72-hour definition, and we sort of also do a 12-hour definition, and I'll try and do a 30-second definition. To the best of my knowledge and to my understanding, permaculture is actually a design science. And I suppose it's about designing your lifestyle to fit in within, I suppose, certain parameters. And that those parameters, and I suppose the essence to the design is that where, as a permaculturist, you would utilise existing and learn from existing natural patterns, the observation of natural patterns, the understanding of natural patterning, and incorporating that biomimicry, natural patterning into design for sustainable human settlement. Yeah. So whether that be your own home, but then how your home fits into the greater community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is one aspect for homesteaders. You know, sometimes we struggle a little bit with that, how to incorporate, you know, our home, then, you know, our yard, and then our paddocks into a cohesive unit that works together, you know. And you know, I think permaculture is a really great fit for homesteaders.
Yes. And
I think instinctively, like we've said, a lot of people are inclined towards it, but you know, we don't always have all the tools or keys to know how to apply it. So today we really want to focus in on time as an aspect that permaculture really addresses well. And I think time is really important. It's probably one of our most important resources that we have, but we treat it so flippantly, I think, particularly in our Western culture. We have a tendency to try and jam as much in as we can, whereas permaculture is much more about a slower process of applying time to our daily life. So just to start off, sorry, just figure out where I'm going to start here. So I've just said here, we don't often think that time is a form of capital, but I know that it is in permaculture in a couple of different ways. So today we want to discuss the 3 ways that I think are really important in permaculture. The first way is the way we use a personal time audit to direct the types of gardens we design and build. The second way is defining and discussing the permaculture concepts of niches and spaces in time. And the third is defining time and how that relates to yield. So when it comes to coming to that first one and how we use time to direct how we design and build our gardens, I know for myself, and I've had this conversation with other people, that often we bite off more than we can chew in terms of our planning. So can you guys tell us a little bit about how you teach people to incorporate the time they have into their garden design?
Okay. Do you have anything? jump in?
Well,
feel urgent you need to say?
No, it's just really about looking logically how much time you have to put into your garden. I mean, when you look at hours and time aspect, you know, okay, well, how long have I got in the morning to put in? And so if you roughly have only 10 hours a week to do your gardening, you know, 2 hours a day now in the morning, well, that 10 hours a week, you can only expect to accomplish a certain amount.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if you've got less than that, you're only going to do an hour. You're not going to put in a huge garden that you have to maintain more than your 10 hours. So, yes, to work out how much logically, time-wise, you're going to put into your garden.
So would you advise people to get their calendar out, like a weekly calendar or whatever, and actually literally mark out how much time they have? Like, what would you advise people to do?
I think there's I'll just come back a little bit. I suppose if somebody asks me to say, I suppose like a consultancy, somebody says, oh, can you come to our place and have a look? I want to do permaculture. I've done a workshop and I'm on fire, I'm keen as. Before I get that, like on the phone, I sort of say to them, listen, before I get there, I'd really like you to think about a few things. And we can then discuss that because it's going to be directly relative to what you do and how you do it. So it's kind of like the first thing, and relative to time, is where do you want to be in 20 years' time?
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, where do you want to be?
Yeah.
What do you want it to be, your system to be providing for you? How much time do you wish to be spending in your system for that, from that 20-year and beyond period? Okay, so are you going to be retired by then so that your time that you spend in your system can increase? Or are you a young couple looking at, you know, maybe having a family 10 years down the track, which means that you're going to have young children in 20 years' time, which is going to alter the way you utilise your time. So coming back now, then it's kind of like, once we've identified where we want to be in 20 years' time, it's then, okay, well, over this next 20 years, how much time have you got? And I think working it out to a week as an average is good. A month might be a little bit too long a period of time, and daily is a bit narrow. So I sort of generally urge people to sort of work on a week and how much time do you have to put towards your system. And when I say your system, it's because in this, over the next 20 years, there's going to be probably more time spent on building, construction and establishment than there is on management and maintenance. And that over that 20-year period of time, that will click over, that will switch over from, you know, reducing the amount of building, construction and the hard yakka, okay, because there's also, you know, in that time there's hard yakka and it does get easier. It does get easier. There's a click over point in time where, my systems are actually clicking in, they're starting to benefit each other, and I no longer have to do as much, so I have more available time. So I think to start with, there's that big picture of understanding and time management. And so it's kind of like, if you've only got a couple of hours a week for the next 20 years, that's fine. That's fine. And that then after 20 years, you might have 40 hours a week because you intend to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be what you do that 2 hours a week over the next 20 years is going to be directly relevant to where you want to be and what you want to be doing in that 20 years time. And some of it may be just purely keeping areas of your design on hold, building fertility within those niches, but just on hold, preparing them for that 20-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll be others where you direct to maybe have your little bit of green pick, an hour a week just to maintain your lunch salads.
Yeah.
So it's all sort of relative. I think if you, to be realistic, I would be recommending a couple more hours than just 2 hours a week to achieve your goals. And to be realistic. And it's the difference between, do we design an intensive market garden style design that requires 20 hours a week to make it work, or do we design a food forest that we establish over 10 years that passively looks after itself? Yield may possibly at 20 years end up being the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as nutritional return. So.
Yeah. And I think we struggle very much, maybe in the Western culture, maybe as humans in general, to think about what will my life look like in 20 years' time. We don't ask those questions, and I think permaculture is very good at getting you to think about that, because, we don't think about the life cycle of a fruit tree, for example. And so that's what it helps you to do. It helps you step out and go, okay, over this next 10 years, this fruit tree will be producing such and such by then,
Yeah.
So it's a really good point that you're making there. So just a quick question, can you give me some examples of when you've seen people use their time well in the design of their gardens? So just some brief ideas, or if you can't think of any, that's no worries. But have you seen anybody and you're like, oh wow, they're really, really nailing that in their garden? Or have you come up with some ideas?
I used to have a friend and she had an amazing garden. And I always wondered how she had such a good garden, because she had kids and all these other chores to do. But she used to get up very early.
Yeah.
She'd be up at 5 o'clock and she'd put in 2 hours every morning into her garden.
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah.
I admired that. I thought that was good,
Yeah. Actually, my husband is very much like that. He'll get up there and he's that guy who chops down the tree, not literally, but he does the slow, steady, consistent. Whereas I'm more of the chop it down as fast as you can. But he gets up in the morning and does about an hour of work, and geez, he can get some work done.
It's the consistency of every day, just carrying on.
It's impressive.
Yes.
And in that, I generally find, people who are, utilising permaculture principles and growing some of their own food and things like that, I can generally tell by the smile on their face. If they're happy and loving life, and we're out socialising and they're happy, that tells me this person is utilising their time very well, because they can afford to go out and socialise, because we are innately social beings. Social ability is part of our reality. And if you can't get out to socialise, there's something must be going on with the time. With the time thing.
That's so true. I had a chat with a friend the other night, and we were talking about different YouTubers who are growing their farms, but they literally, that's all they do from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, and it's it's actually quite a turn off, like watching them just throw themselves at their farms without any break. And that's why, like, I don't want to have a farm like that, you know.
No, I think we're designing sustainable human settlement systems.
Yeah.
And that, you know, happiness and joy is an essential part in any design.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of, you know, one of the reasons people may choose to venture down a homesteading permaculture future is because they may be seeing in our mainstream society that there's things that aren't working and it's not making them happy.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to flip over to your new venture and create an unhappy situation for yourself. I mean,
why would you?
Yeah, that's right.
And you have to really learn those skills then to change the trajectory, you know? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nature doesn't put the same deadlines on us as what your CEO may.
Yeah, yes. That is definitely why we're talking about permaculture and how it thinks about time. So the next thing we wanted to chat about was niches and spaces in time as a permaculture concept. So in permaculture, there's this concept of identifying niches in space or territory, in time as cycles, and in space-time like a schedule. The idea is that each niche you identify and are able to make use of, you can create more yield. So the first question here is, can you define or simplify for our audience what niches and spaces in time in the permaculture concept are?
I can sort of, I think I get the gist of the question. I feel I get the gist of the question, and maybe if I lay down an example, you can direct me to see.
Yeah, for sure.
I suppose one example that I could maybe share is that you know, Harmony and I live at in a permaculturally designed property, and at 4 o'clock every afternoon, we generally, 9 times out of 10, we come together and we go and feed the animals. And when we're feeding the animals, we've positioned the animals in a certain way. So we've got chickens, we've got 2 chicken areas, and we've also got a duck area. We're developing a bit more grazing to introduce more animals, but because of our time, we just introduce them gradually as we open up a bit more time. It's kind of like, okay, we can now incorporate another animal into the system.
Yeah.
I don't wish to incorporate that animal until I've got the actual time to honour.
My husband would say that's the reverse of which I do things. So
okay.
Animals first, time later.
But coming back to that, so we will go out and on our walk, okay, we feed the productive chooks, for the egg laying and compost making, and then we go feed the retirement village chooks, which has got the rooster and a bit more free range, and they're down the citrus orchard, and then we go up and feed the ducks, lock them into their little dammed area. In that walk, we've observed, that bunch of bananas over there is nearly ready for picking. Those passion fruit are coming on over there. Those dragon fruits, look, we've got 3 more flowers on the dragon fruit. What's happening here? Yep, there's pecans on over there. Yep, oh gosh, these ducks up here, they're looking like they're getting, how old are those ducks again? They're 18 weeks. Right, okay, we've got work to do there. And then as we're walking back, we can duck past our zone 1-2 garden, and literally with the basket, with the chook eggs, the duck eggs, there might be the odd passion fruit, in there or something like that. We can even duck past a Zone 1 green pick garden and come into the kitchen with all of that produce ready for storage, saving, or preparing for the evening meal.
Mm-hmm.
But we've only just gone out to feed the chooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great example.
So I suppose because of the design, and I suppose what makes a permaculture design different to just a normal, somebody that's developing a farm. Oh, I need a new shed. Oh, okay, I'll stick it next to that shed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to get some chooks. Oh, over there looks like a good spot. Let's put them over there.
Yeah.
In the permaculture system, it's not actually how many sheds you've got or how many chooks you've got. It's about how those elements or potentially niches work and support each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're designing systems to maximise our time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that 1 10, 15 minute walk that it takes to feed the 3-4 lots of animals and get back again, but then we've also just about cased quarter of the property.
Yeah.
And know exactly that, those 3 passion fruits, they're going to be ready tomorrow. Those ones are about 4 days away, and these are the ones that we'll take today.
And
so
this
that we
tree
know.
might need trimming soon.
That tree, gosh, I've got to get in there with the rice knife and clean up that vine off that citrus tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
like a little audit almost.
And that happens
audit.
every day.
Yeah.
And I think going back to your partner's consistency, that the animals have to get fed every day.
Yeah.
There's no averting that. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, it's a consistent job. What other things are require that sort of consistency, and basically designed to put them along the path to the ducks or the chooks.
Yeah.
So that they're incorporated, all of your consistency is in one group, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting in that I think I kind of relate it. We're watching Les Hidden's what is it called? The guy who goes out into the bush, the Bush Tucker Man, and he was talking about his experience dealing with working with the Aboriginal people, in that they're very efficient in what they do because they understand that balance of energy intake and energy output. And I think we kind of have become separated from that a little bit in our modern culture because we can just go and get our food, from outside of the space that we're living in. So we don't measure our energy output very well, I don't think, So if, like you said, it's efficient to go and tick all of those boxes in that one walk in the afternoon, which would be very much what a person living off the land would be like, is how much can I make this all happen so I'm not having to go out and do 2, 3, 4 times,
Yeah.
So it's a mindset as much as it is about the design itself.
That's right. And I suppose coming back to the design from very much the permaculture perspective, we can then also break our design down into, and it's very much a permaculture thing, zones.
Yeah.
And I suppose we've got zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I suppose a simple way of defining those zones, zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, would be frequency of visits, which is relative to time again.
Yeah.
So for something like your parsley, your green pick, that you may use 3-4 times a day if you're making a cordial, lunch, dinner, kids sandwich, you want that garden or that zone, that area where you may be frequenting it 4 times a day. Well, you're probably going to want that more at your back kitchen doorstep than you are down the garden path, down past the the man shed, down past the pond, and
in the back corner,
in the back corner, where I very rarely go. Okay, a lemon tree. How often do we utilise lemons inside the house? Okay, it's kind of like we utilise a lemon probably 10 times more than we would utilise a mandarin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and so the lemon tree is going to be planted closer to the back kitchen door than what the mandarin tree, because of time. Time is actually determining the positioning, and that the time that I'm referring to there is frequency of visits. How often do you frequent that particular niche, that particular element, that particular system?
And I've found in my time, farming, doing permaculture, you really do have to respect that rule, because you might think, oh, it's all right, it's out at zone 3, I'll do that, and then you find you just literally don't go out there, you don't see it, it doesn't happen, and it's done, and before you know it, it's been 4 weeks since you're in that spot. Again and again and again, that truth has come to me, you've got to respect how you move through the spaces and when you move through them.
That's right.
And I think a lot of people, they have a bit of a beef with permaculture because it's not neat, and so they're thinking, I don't want to put a veggie patch, right at my back door or whatever. But it doesn't have to look messy. It can look like a bunch of self-watering pots on your back veranda, for example.
It can be as messy as our natural environment, because mentioned earlier, that's what a permaculture system does, is mimic nature. So it's only ever going to look as messy as a natural system, forest. But that is entirely up to the individuals doing the design. We were having a discussion earlier, is when I put my permaculture hat on and as a facilitating a workshop, I'll stick to what the books say, and in that there are certain principles, and one of those principles is that as a design feature, function over aesthetics is a design parameter. It's kind of like function isn't the number one priority to do something. There needs to be, it's recommended to have 1 or 2 other functional priorities before, I suppose, aesthetic comes into it. And so I suppose it depends on how each individual chooses to approach that scenario.
And I think once again, coming back to that whole thing, like when we're doing an energy or time audit, it's got to be taking into account that longer term idea of what we want our life to look like. So for example, having a veggie patch that at times might look a little less tidy than normal, but you're eating fresh greens and fresh food regularly in your family, is going to benefit you in the long term, more so than having a neat yard that you can mow and keep the grass at a rate that is pleasing to your eye, so there's that weighing up of the long-term benefits of it.
The neater you would like it, when you're sitting down and doing that long-term time audit that we started with, allow more time. Because the neater it is, the more time it's going to take.
I like to have a garden that looks nice and pleasing to the eye and lots of colour. But to achieve that, I have to spend that extra bit of time in there to do it, you know. And I'm happy to do that, because they're the types of things I want. I like to have a nice, pleasing look around us. It doesn't mean way out there, it can't be more, wild.
Yeah.
But in my immediate view, I like to have the colour, and that's where I should probably put more time goes into that maybe than it should. But I'm pleased with that. That's fine for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also find that the neater it is doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more production and greater yields. In the long term, you probably actually reduce your production and yields because you're removing things that look untidy, that are housing beneficial insects and lizards and frogs and all those things that benefit the garden.
That's a very
because of a personal mind set of neatness.
Yeah, it's a very interesting challenge, and you know, something that is a very serious subject for our, you know, modern day, you know, growing things versus just having an aesthetic, nice home to live in. Like, it's a very serious issue for a lot of people, I think. So
it's kind of it brings up. I've got to be careful here. You might not want to put this one in, but I suppose it brings up control issues. Neatness is a control issue.
Yeah.
I want to control how it's going to work as opposed to letting nature just do it.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I kind of have a little joke in my place because I'm in control of my garden.
Yeah.
And no, you are not growing there. Sorry, I love you, but no, that's not the spot for you to grow. You're out.
You have a little bit of control.
And I have areas where it's like, okay, this is where I can express my control freakness.
Yeah.
But then over there, nah, mate, that's just left and it's going for it.
This makes me feel so good. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I'm about to take these guys and show them my garden. So they'll see where I'm a control freak and totally not.
So it's kind of like, you know, in that, you're working with yourself.
Yeah.
So you know that, okay, I have that certain in me. So I'm going to dedicate and honour that part of me in this area here.
Yeah.
But down there, it's okay. That can go wild.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think we're sort of coming close to the end of our conversation here, but I wanted to just ask, kind of delve into this last topic. So we might just move into defining time and how it relates to yield. So I'm just going to read a bit of a quote here from some of the permaculture literature I have been reading to help sort of paint a bit of a picture around this next topic. So, time cycles in mature systems do happen. A large tree falling, a super predator dying, a flood, but they can be very long, a time of slow renewal. In our annual systems, most of today's agriculture, the turnaround is seasonal, too quick to maintain a healthy state. In permaculture, we combine the components of annual and perennial. For us, time is a resource in productivity. Too much or not enough isn't productive, so we use different time cycles to our advantage. And so they talk about this example that they give here, which I think was great. The example that they use are the American prairies, which were once a stable, productive ecosystem that supporting migratory animals and countless species of plants. Then the prairies were fenced and cultivated to only a few species of grass and beef production, causing them to reduce their biodiversity and productivity down to a small fraction of the protein that could have been harvested from the wild system. So without the migration and biodiversity, the land's fertility has also degraded. And the finishing quote here is, the prairies became a system of economic yield over natural yield, and the yields focused on economies are not stable. They are short-term and waste energy for profit. We must get back to the measuring yield by energy rather than money, as these economically driven designs make profits now but fail us in the long run. Natural systems increase in diversity and stability over time. So my question is, many people in our modern culture would find it difficult to identify or relate to the ideas I've just spoken about. You guys have been involved in permaculture systems for many years, So can you share what you've seen happen in the lifespan of a garden or a farm designed and built according to the permaculture principles to create mature and high-yielding systems? So, yeah, what have you guys seen in the gardens you've been involved in?
I've got an avocado tree, which I planted from seed, and it would be 30 years old plus.
Wow.
Over the period of time, like people, when I was getting this seed together, because I ate it and it was the most beautiful avocado, I'm going to grow a tree. Oh, you're crazy, it takes 7 years to grow an avocado tree. You should just buy a grafted one. Oh no, this one was really nice, you know. Now over this period of time, this avocado tree, I've seen it go through many different changes in its life. There was a stage when it produced the biggest, beautifulest avocados, and then there was a stage it produced no avocados. There was a stage I thought, I might as well chop this tree down because it's just not doing it anymore. But no, I waited, and again, it produced beautiful avocados. So it always, I've watched this tree change and grow, go through production, non-production. And when I hear people say, oh, this tree's no good, I'm going to chop it out, I go, oh, just give it time.
Yeah.
You never know what it's going to do for you.
Yeah, yeah. That's an awesome story. Did you have anything to add, Luke?
I think there's a few things there in the question. Is that permaculture systems, if I was to utilise the word food production, I'm creating a defined difference between growing food and food production. Okay, so I suppose food production has an economic resonance about it, where growing food does not. It has a nutritional resonance about it. In a permaculture system, there's nothing there to say don't go into food production. What you'll find in most of the literature relative to permaculture is that if you're going into production, it's small, intensive systems for that production, because large, intensive systems are not sustainable. But your small, intensive systems are. So it's quite easy to have a small block of land and make a few bucks out of produce that you have intentionally grown to sell.
Yeah.
As opposed to your surplus that you've created from just having a permaculture garden, because that's what naturally happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that I suppose difference in understanding of I'm growing my own food, or I'm producing food for sale. To me, they're two different energies.
Yeah. Two
different energy requirements going towards them, and also then different results. I've seen 20, 30-year-old food forests that are quite passive. They maybe only require 40 hours a year, if that, maintenance and management, but you're spending a lot more than 40 hours a year in their harvesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Mangoes, jackfruit, all those sorts of things. One of the points in your question there was our Western food cycle is based on, as we've sort of primarily descended from European backgrounds, the Western culture. It's that Europe's climate is cool to temperate, and so that is perfectly suited for annual food production. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you come to Australia, that same climatic zone is probably from the Victorian border south.
Yeah.
So the most of Australia is in a completely different climatic zone.
People just really struggle with that idea. That,
okay.
You know,
and
really
so
do. I know I did.
So our natural system, all of these plants that you look out any window and you see plants, they have all perfectly evolved over a couple of billion years to be in the right spot at the right time, anywhere in the world. We don't get, elm trees growing in Papua New Guinea. Mm-hmm. You don't get golden rain trees from, Central America growing in Tasmania. Mm-hmm. Nature just does not work like that. Mm-hmm. If we're to take a plant from one climatic zone and try to get it to grow in another climatic zone, you can do it. But there will be extra energy required, more, and part of that energy equation will be time.
Yeah.
So it is going to take you longer, more time, to grow a cabbage in Queensland than it's going to take more of your time to grow a cabbage in Queensland than it is to grow it in Victoria.
Yeah.
Okay? We can sort of go, oh, but gee, I like cabbage.
Yeah.
And all we really need to do is change our mind.
Yeah.
Or our tongue, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because for me, pawpaws in Queensland kind of grow like a weed.
Yeah.
Where you pop them into the compost and you put them through the chooks and then you spread that compost out, you just have pawpaws popping up everywhere. And so if I want to have a coleslaw for lunch, I'll go find my carrot and I'll just pop out, grab a green pawpaw, grate it up and swap my cabbage for green pawpaw. It's basically growing outside as a weed, and I don't actually have to expend any energy, time, nutrient, fertilising, looking after anything. It just grows, pops up by itself, grows by itself, produces its fruit by itself, and the only time that I'm associating with it is harvesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that's
so
one
simple.
example. That's one example. So tropical food gardening is in order to be sustainable, it is easier to perennialise the system and reduce the amount of emphasis you have on the annual system.
Yeah, we definitely in our region, like down here where we are, like in our group, a lot of us have been moving a lot more to those perennial, species that just work so well. And we have a very harsh climate here. We get the wettest of the wets and the driest of the dries and the hottest of the hots. We don't get too cold, but it's hot for a long time.
Yeah. And
so have a species that lasts and can stand up to that. Like you said, a pawpaw, just chuck them in the ground and that will go. So don't fight against it, embrace it and find
go
those.
with the flow. That's what nature wants to grow there.
Yeah.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Save your time.
Yeah.
And energy.
So we might sort of head to the end of our conversation now. So you guys obviously have a wealth of knowledge. I know you run 2-day workshops at your farm. How can people get in contact with you? What kind of services and teaching do you guys offer? Do you want to tell a bit of your story and sprig your stuff a little bit? So
yes, go on, dear, that's yours.
That's my department? Okay.
Yeah.
We go with the flow.
Yeah.
There are some times when I feel hugely motivated to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll sit down, grab the calendar and boom, 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 all right, let's set dates. And there are other times where it's just like, I just want to go and garden.
Yeah.
I just want to be
we'll
time
get
to go.
people to ring up and they'll, be wanting to do a particular course and we go, okay, well, yeah, we'll do that in, 3 weeks' time or whatever.
Yeah.
We've got the numbers together. We're actually looking at now just doing 1 day. We've been doing the 2 days introduction, which has been great.
Mm-hmm.
But what we found was that after the introduction, people still want more.
Yeah.
And if you've already done the introduction, how can you come back and get more because you've already done it? So we've been talking about doing 1 days and on particular subjects, and also weekends where you immerse yourself. So depending on what we're doing, it might be harvesting coffee.
Right.
Or we'll put it up on Facebook that this weekend we're harvesting coffee for the weekend. And then we can, share that experience together.
Yeah. So people can pretty much follow what you guys are doing on Facebook. You'll put a post up, and if people are like, I wonder how to harvest coffee.
If we're going to have an event or a day, a weekend or something like that, it definitely goes onto Facebook. But I don't sleep with my phone.
We neither of us are really good at keeping up with Facebook.
That's fine.
If we had a live-in administrator, I'm sure that I would be 10 times busier.
Administrator for these
because it would be like, let's. I've seen you've got a weekend here. Let's put a workshop out. I'll do the advertising. I'll make sure all the bookings get done. I'll do all that.
Anyone?
So that is a drop in a bit of a hint.
Because we laugh because
we would be able to provide. We certainly would be able to provide more to the community if we had if we did have some help.
Yeah.
We're permaculturalists. We're designing our system to fit in with our broader community up at Finch Hatton.
Yeah.
And that's our priority.
Absolutely.
That's right. And it's awesome to be able to share that with other people and have other people come along and just sort of go, wow, this is, But unfortunately, we won't be sitting around talking about it for too long.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to happen sitting down talking
Yeah.
about it. Permaculture is the practical application of the design that you've sat down and drawn.
So true.
It's all about first that design, but then it is only about the practical application, and through that practical application, the knowledge you will be immersed into, and it's not going to necessarily come from books or other people, it's going to come from your own experience out there.
Yeah.
And the ants are going to start telling you things, and the lizards are going to start telling you things, and the asparagus is going to start telling you things, and the mango tree is going to start telling you things, and you're going to go, I get it now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But you're only going to get that if you're in it.
Mm-hmm. So when people come to your guys' farm to do a workshop or whatever, it is a workshop.
Well, no, we do
talk.
We do talk. And so in that, what we really encourage is for I suppose groups to organise themselves.
Yeah.
If there's a party of 5 or 6 friends that go, gee, I really want to do this, and I was going to go, right, give us a call. We're basically, for 6-7 people, it's kind of like, right, well, set the date. When do we want to do it? We'll do it at a time that suits that group.
Awesome.
And personalise it, you know, find out from that group, you know, fine tune the information that they wish to go home with, and we can target it to that.
That's the thing with permaculture, it's so diverse and you know, the amount of ways you could take it, and you really do have to have a bit of an idea of what you're wanting to get out of the... It's
a tricky one, because it is permanent culture, it is permaculture. Us spending half our time on Facebook does not work for us. So we don't have, I suppose, the marketing and advertising and administration skills that it takes to keep all those things
There's always
ticking
somebody
over.
out there who loves that kind of stuff.
So it's kind of like, give us a call.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. We're generally, I don't think we've ever knocked anybody back from sharing awesome stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
Permaculture Connections.
Yeah.
Mackay Permaculture Connections is a Facebook page that we started up pretty well 12 months ago. I saw a niche there when COVID first started in Australia, that people were starting to ask gardening questions, and there wasn't I suppose a clear forum anywhere for that, and so we started up just a simple Facebook page called Mackay Permaculture Connections.
Awesome.
Get onto there. If we do anything, that's where it'll be advertised.
Yeah.
If you wish to get hold of us, you can message us or get on there.
And I'll put all of the details to contact these guys in the links below this video.
Pandurunga Permaculture Farm.
Yeah, I'm glad you said. I wasn't quite sure I was going to pronounce it right.
Pandurunga
Permaculture Farm. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming down. They've come all the way down here to my house to share their information and knowledge with me today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm going to take these guys for a tour of my farm to see my control freak areas and my not so control freak
I'm
areas.
really excited to go and see the changes that's happened in the last 8 years.
Okay, well, thank you very much, guys, and we will chat to you again soon. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. That was
Thanks,
great.
guys.